Hello everyone, welcome back. We're going to jump into some psychic development books and the ones I do recommend and don't recommend, because you guys are always asking me which ones I recommend, and even the ones I do recommend, I see you guys jumping on to Amazon and buying ones that I'm like, guys, don't get those ones. Now, I have been studying and coaching psychic development for years, and I think it's important that you know a little bit about the person recommending these books just as much as you know about the authors behind these books. So, welcome. My name is Lauren. I'm a psychic development coach. I've been doing psychic work for the past 10 years, and I have been coaching students just as long. So, I have been coaching students in person, in classes, via online one-on-one sessions, in group settings online. I've been doing group sessions in person. I pretty much coach students weekly through Patreon, through our group settings. I do this all the time. I not only made courses around psychic development, but I have an online support system so that I am holding people's hand through that process. So it's not just like, here's the information, I'm throwing it at you and just bye, see you later. It's really important to me that you have that support, because the psychic ability is not something that you develop overnight. It's something that takes time and practice. And so you'll see that that's kind of one of my criteria for these books, is that, you know, you have to have something that is gonna, you know, hold your hand for a long period of time. But this is the way I learned psychic development, and you can learn a little bit more about my story if you're really curious, but I know you're here just for the books. And so I'm going to jump into it from the worst, because I want you to avoid a lot of the just blech ones first, and I will go to the best ones at the end. So what's my judging criteria here? One, they got to understand how the psychic ability works. If there's an automatic, like, they clearly don't know how this works, that's an automatic no for me. If you don't understand how the psychic ability works and you're writing a book on it, then I'm automatically not going to recommend that book. I also like to recommend a book that has structure and tips and exercises, because I think that's really important. It can't just be theories and stories, but I like that good mix, because if it's just exercises, you can't learn from the stories and the theories. So I think that the books that I think are great have that mix of both. I also looked at the author for all of these. So the author, one has to like be searchable. Another key factor was that, you know, were they psychic? A lot of them were psychic. But another step that I like to see is, have they actually coached students? A lot of them did not coach students. A lot of them just did readings for other people. I do think there is another level of knowledge that you get from coaching students, because sure, you understand your own psychic abilities when you work with your guides and your specific, you know, hurdles and blocks. But when you have to help a different student go through their, you know, hurdles and blocks, you end up learning more about the psychic ability than if it was just you and your specific one journey. And so I do find that the people who actually coach other people with their psychic abilities have more knowledge, more experience, and more to say about the subject. And so I find that those people have more expertise. So let's start with the worst of the worst, and I'm going to go through them quickly just so you know to avoid them. This one I wasn't too big of a fan on. It had very limited topics when it came to psychic development. It kind of had some weird terms in it that were a little bit off to me. And I also really want somebody who's coached people. And I could tell that this came from somebody who didn't. And when I looked into the author, they were somebody who came from more of a yoga background, and had more of like a trauma-focused background, which is great, but just not something that I would look for in a psychic development coach. And a lot of these I read on my Kindle, by the way, which is why you see a picture. But this one was made by somebody who wrote a crap ton of books, which was also kind of like a red flag to me. They wrote a lot of intro-level books on a lot of various subjects, which to me says you're probably not writing very deep, or you're not very knowledgeable about one topic in particular. Also, I could not find information on this author anywhere. So another kind of red flag, it was very chakra heavy, which, I mean, third eye, that's what it's about. But I find that the psychic ability is way more than just the third eye. This was just a very Eastern approach to it, but I think there's a lot more to it. And then another thing that really got caught me off guard with this was that she equated the third eye to when you improve your third eye, you improve your memory and your learning, which I really don't think is true. I think that, you know, your memory and your left brain is completely different than your right brain, and it's not like linked to your memory at all. It should not be. And if you're using your memory in your psychic readings, you're not doing it right. I have a whole video on that. I won't go into it. But so point being, just a sign of somebody who maybe is not aware of what they're talking about. This workbook had a lot of adjacent modalities to the psychic ability. It was kind of like, oh, here's some things that are, you know, things you could do that could increase your psychic ability, but it didn't really go over like core psychic principles. It didn't really explain how to do even the exercises that were in it. So automatic kind of like skipped for me. Also, the author had written lots and lots of books, and you know, I felt like there's a lot more exercises out there that can explain it a lot better and be a little bit more direct to the core of what psychic development is. This one I was super excited to read because I see it all over TikTok. No, just don't do it. Don't read it. I'm bummed. Because I really like Llewellyn's books. It was so intro level. I felt like you could learn as much as what was in that book as like literally like an online article. I feel like it was just like that thin of information. Also, the author was a counselor and not a psychic development coach. And it was weird because she wrote a ton of other books, and the next book was this one. This one I would kind of put in the bad but maybe okay range. I felt like the previous one was just like an excerpt of this one. So if you're gonna go with either of them, go with this one because this is like a longer version. But still, I wouldn't go with this one because it's just kind of like okay. But this one I see a lot of people go for because it's the most advertised. And I get it. Like the cover is very, probably got the best like marketing, best SEO. I think it's been around for a long time. I think I even remember when I started seeing this book as well. Not a fan because it's missing Claire's. If you know me, I'm a stickler for the Claire's. If you don't understand the Claire's, then I'm kind of like, probably are not aware a lot about the psychic ability. I'm learning to be a little bit kinder about, you know, maybe messing up the Claire's names because everybody might have a different interpretation of that. But to like leave out Claire's completely, I think is a totally different thing. It kind of has like a little bit of everything. It jumps around a lot. It goes into past lives. It goes into like psychokinesis. It's a smattering of everything. But I feel like it still doesn't go to the core of psychic development. It's always like a lot of these bad books, they're just kind of like dancing around the subject and not really going into what is psychic development. And there's definitely no like comprehensive steps in this one either of like, what are you doing? A, B, C, D. The reason why I said though that it was okay is it does have a little bit more exercises than some of these other books that I would kind of deem as just kind of bad. This book was interesting because almost every other book that I read referenced this book in like the auto or the bibliography in the back. And it was kind of like we're gonna all reference this book as like the authority. And I was really surprised because I was not a fan of this book. It was very ego driven. It was more heavy on the stories and him as a personality, which I tend to find the case to be more so with males. Again, not trying to judge, just trying to be very analytical. There was different topics than the other books, which I did like about this. There were a lot of exercises in it, but there were a lot of his personal philosophies. And with psychic development, again, my approach, I think it's a skill. I think it should be very non-denominational, and I think it should be taught in a very much like it's a skill, but it should be removed from belief systems. So if I'm teaching it to you, I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm teaching you the skill, and you go apply it and figure out what to believe on your own. And so I felt like there was a little too much of his own beliefs thrown into this. I kind of got the energy of he was just a little bit egotistical. He was a little bit putting himself on a pedestal. I mean, maybe that was just my bias and maybe somebody else reading it maybe didn't feel that way, but there were a lot of rants, a lot of like, I'm anti-buzzwords, but also he used a lot of buzzwords. So I was kind of just like turned off by the book. But yeah, that's why I was not a fan of it. And then when I kind of looked further into the author, which I always did that after reading, he was not a coach, did not coach anybody, but he was like a psychic development coach, but he was like a hypnotist. And so I do think there is some good stuff that comes out of being like a hypnotist with your psychic abilities. But again, I'm like, I want somebody who has actually coached students as a psychic and psychic students. All right, this one was another just smattering of modalities. It's like astral travel, chakras, manifestation. It's all helpful, but it's not like getting to the core of psychic abilities. There were 4 clairs. Again, there's 6. Oh, it also went into mind reading, which is not something that like, it's not that we don't do it, and it's not that it's not like allowed, but it's just kind of like a sign to me of like maybe poor ethics, you know. It's kind of like, what are we teaching about that, you know? And then the stories in it were kind of okay. And then when I looked into this author, couldn't find anything about this person. No, nothing. They didn't, there was no website, no nothing. So I don't know their credibility at all. This one, I don't even think anyone would find this one. I found this one way early on when I was first studying. When I was first studying, all I could find were Sylvia Browne books and Doreen Virtue books. So I doubt anyone is looking for this. But all her stories were just stories about her, a lot of fluff, no structure, hardly any exercises. It's only helpful if you had the exact same like journey as her. So again, like I don't find that one very helpful at all. She's experienced, but she's never coached like students. You know, and when I say this, I'm sure they've coached students here and there, but I want like somebody who's coached a lot of students, somebody who's had a program, you know, somebody who's taught a lot of classes. This one, I was kind of bummed out about. There was not a lot of structure here. It was all kind of her own experience. I found a lot of like just incorrect information, a lot of duplicate information from other books. It was just like nothing new, no like her own experiences, her own stories. Like there was a little bit obviously, but and then when I looked into the author herself, she was very good at like, you know, having good press and like, you know, being able to market herself, but maybe not a coach and not like working with actual students. So yeah, I would skip this one as well. I thought I'd mention this one for a kid's book, and let me know if you'd like a kid's version of this one. This is Psychic Baby. You know, you can't even get this book anymore. They stopped printing it. I wanted it for the longest time, but I'm kind of glad I didn't get it because I thought maybe it would teach about psychic abilities, but it doesn't at all. It just rhymes, but there's actually nothing about it that teaches psychic development at all. It's more actually about the imagination. So I think it's great for teaching about imagination, but I don't think it's helpful for psychic abilities. I have 2 kiddos, and so I'm constantly looking for witchy woo-woo books, and I have actually a bigger stack of that than I do books for myself on psychic development. So let me know if you'd like to see that as a video. So my next category of books is kind of just like the mid-range. They're good, they're okay, but they're not like fantastic. And that is, first off, I think I'm going to start with The Everyday Psychic by Karen Harrison. And so I read this way back in the day when I was studying at the Aspen program. This is actually written by the woman who owns the metaphysical store that is pretty close to me. And it's actually the metaphysical store that I went to a lot of classes in. And I actually liked this book because I felt like the author actually knew what she was talking about. She had a little bit of everything in this book, plus exercises. It was a little too much for a beginner at that time for me, but it was also like too brief if you were advanced. And for those of you who are familiar with me, this is not Karen Fox, the Karen that I studied under. She's a different Karen that ran the shop. So I think it's a good one if you're starting out, but I do think it's missing some more advanced information that could take you much further. So I would maybe skip this one, but still add it if you're really like, I want to consume everything. Now my next book, I would kind of, you know, rate more as good, also written by Karen Harrison, but it is very new. She just recently wrote this, and it's so funny because it was sent to me by Wiser Books, and they were like, hey, will you review this book for us? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so funny because I know her, I've met her, she runs the shop right next to me, and I've read her book years ago, and now she's making a second one. So I've taken the time to read this second one, and I was like, I'm also making a video about it. How funny. I would say this book is not as good as the first one, but it's still pretty good. Not a fan of how much there was about angels in here. That's just a personal preference. There were lots of exercises in here. I really liked how she covered things that I haven't seen in other books, like synesthesia. I'm gonna set this down because it's just getting a little too dark on me, but I felt like there was not enough on like protection and boundaries. So for somebody who's a beginner, I would not recommend this. I would recommend this more for somebody who's already knows quite a bit. Because I think it's really important. You got to know a lot about that protection, boundaries, psychic hygiene, all of that stuff. She also has a good amount of research in here as well. As a Virgo, I just like when people do their research. There are a lot of pieces that I've seen in other books, too. So even though there's new information, there's a lot that's kind of repetitive. I feel like that's adjacent to the psychic abilities. It obviously strengthens your psychic abilities, but there might be some people who are not interested in that, for psychic development. My biggest complaint, unfortunately, is the blue print. The whole book is printed in blue. I don't know, maybe they're not all like that, but that really hurt my eyes for some reason. I couldn't, it really hurt my eyes. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but it drove me nuts. But the exercises are great. It actually explains how to do it. That was the thing that I liked about the original, was the exercises were well written. Now this next book is kind of weird because I would say it's bad for psychic development, but it's good / okay for empaths, and it's the Psychic Empath. I think it's a really good tool for empathic people who struggle, but yeah, if you're going into it thinking you're going to learn about psychic development, just know that you're not. It has a lot of very buzzy words, but I do think that, it kind of makes sense for the marketing and for the people who are probably looking for that book. Like it talks like, what's your intuitive type, very like BuzzFeed style, quiz style stuff. And I'm not like, that's not my style. I don't really think of psychic abilities that way. She also says that having psychic headaches are normal. I totally disagree. I think that's a sign that you're doing it wrong. So there's some things in here that I disagree with. However, I do think that there's a lot of helpful tips in here that I do think empaths could absolutely use. The exercises in it are kind of not good for psychic development, but again, the empath section in it is huge and it's super helpful. So I think if you're just specifically needing empathic help, that is why you should get it. And the author I could not find a website for or socials for. So again, it's kind of like, who are you? What are your credentials? What have you studied? How do you teach people? And it's kind of like, I like to know that. All right, now we're gonna get into my great list. These are the top ones. They're very few, but they are the ones that I would actually go out and purchase or rent from the library, put on your Kindle, and actually take the time to read. Now, this first one I was really surprised with and I really liked. Lisa, I've heard her name before. I hadn't read her book, but I really liked this one because she took a lot of the same steps that I would take to teaching the psychic ability. They're the ones I learned, and so the whole book I was like, yes, 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 this is how you do it. Yep. And so if I'm having that reaction, I'm like, cool, yes, I approve. And I also like that she threw a lot of shamanic techniques in there. Some people maybe might not like that, but I find that shamanic work is very similar to psychic abilities, but some people might not like that. So just know that going into it. She also covers mediumship and also working with ancestors, which a lot of these other books didn't. It was interesting because she explained intuition as being inside of you and the psychic ability as being outside of you. That was kind of one of the things I kind of disagreed with. I was like, I feel like intuition and psychic ability are the same thing. But one of the things I loved about Lisa, she encouraged outside practice. She was like, you don't just read this book, you go and you practice. And I was like, yes, Lisa. She also like encouraged that a lot of us awaken slowly and gently to our psychic abilities. It's not always just like that you have to have been born into this psychic family or have had this like near-death experience. So she like validated that everyone is psychic, you know. She also did a great mix of providing stories from her perspective as well as stories from her students, which I also loved. That's how I know that you work with psychic students, if you're telling stories about your psychic students. And if I ever write a book one day, which it's in the cards, it's in the plans one day, you best believe I'm going to put students, you know, examples in there as well. So yeah, definitely recommend Lisa's. Great read. Next up, Sonia's. I fell in love with this because I was already in love with this and I went out and bought it. This is The Psychic Pathway from Sonia. I did not realize how much of this I already knew, but how much of it came from her. Everyone should have this one, seriously. This is like, if you buy any of them, besides Karen's that I'm going to get to, buy this one. Sonia, if you haven't heard of her, she's like a renowned psychic. She's been around for a long time. What I love about this is she breaks it down into weeks. I'm just gonna again set this down. But she breaks down the psychic ability practice into weeks. So she forces you to stop reading and actually practice, which again, I think is probably one of the best ways to set up a book, which I might take notes from that if I ever do write a book. She has very diverse information, but again, she actually gets at the fundamental psychic ability. Like she actually tells you what it is, and she's not like distracting you with all of the like, oh, go do yoga or go meditate or go do chakras. Like she's talking about what the psychic ability is at its core and how to tap into it. And again, it's like I realized that all of my best teachers that I've ever had have probably learned from Sonia, and a lot of us have probably learned from her. And so like, let me just see if I can't just give you an example here. Like this. Expect psychic guidance. Once you are open to psychic guidance, you must move on to expect it. Like this is something that I've taught, that's something that I've learned from Karen, and it seems so fundamentally basic, but that's the thing, is Sonia is the one who has taught us these fundamentals. And I know I'm getting so excited, but I feel like when I came to this book, it was like, I found like the source of some of the stuff that I've learned from the Aspen program. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is Karen. This is a lot of probably where Karen learned some of her stuff. And so I think it's just a gold mine coming from a different person in different words. And again, it kind of works as a workbook as well. There's a couple places for you to put like entry stuff in here, but again, it forces you to stop, actually do the work and practice. I don't think it's as good of a workbook as Karen's, but with this book, she understands the fundamentals and she teaches you those, and you can just tell that she knows what she's talking about. And I think that's why this is like one of those fundamental books that everyone should have, even though it's a little bit older. Keep that in mind. So some of it you might kind of have to take with a grain of salt. It also has a fantastic assessment at the beginning to kind of like assess your psychic abilities. And I think it's a really cool tool to have. Now, this book, I was really, really excited to read. Psychic Witch, I think, is great if you are into witchcraft related stuff. If you are not into witchcraft related things, definitely skip it. It's definitely not going to be for you. However, if you are already into witchcraft or you're interested in witchcraft, and you're interested in psychic abilities, I think this would be a good one to pick up. I feel like Matt is a really good author, but he also, like, I looked into him and I've followed him for a few years. He understands and he does the work. He coaches people. He teaches classes. He's written a couple books. This thing is chock full of exercises. Like, I am learning exercises from him that I've never come across before. It's rare that I find people who know more exercises than I do. Now, I don't think this is necessarily for beginners, because it does cover beginner stuff, but I think if you're completely new to psychic development, you're probably going to be a little bit lost. I think it would be good to have something a little bit separate, maybe on top of this, just so you understand, okay, well, what part of this is witchcraft and what part of this is psychic development, just so you know where the overlap is and is not. I love his fresh perspectives of things. Like, some of the things he brought up to me were new. A lot of that was just because it's witchcraft, which I'm semi-newer to, so I liked the combo that he was bringing both of these worlds together. It also has like a lot of cool pictures as well. Again, like exercises. So like that exercise is about like seeing auras, which is just like a basic clairvoyance exercise. But like there's more, witchcraft related ones. Like, what's another one? Like this exercise, lower self glamour spell. That's obviously a more witchcraft related thing. It just depends on if this is your thing or not. Again, this assumes that you're a little bit practiced, a little bit knowledgeable. Some of the basics are not covered. Because here's the thing, this is built on a belief system. This is built on the fact of like, do you believe in witchcraft? And again, some would argue that witchcraft is not a belief system. It can just be a practice. So, you have to decide. And that's where I'm like, if you were completely new to everything and you're like, I don't know if I believe in it, maybe it's something to explore before jumping into it, or, explore it and then figure it out as you go. Just know, I think I've come across too many people who jump into it and feel like they have to believe it or have to do it, and then they feel weird or icky about it. Just know that you get to decide what to believe in, and the psychic ability is something that can apply to any, belief system. So maybe you like the psychic ability, but you don't like witchcraft. It doesn't have to like stick to this. But maybe you do really like both. I really like both personally, but my only complaint about this book is that the way it's printed is really fragile. Like, if I bend it too far this way, the binding, it's like it's coming apart. So it's just kind of a fragile book. So maybe get like the Kindle version or something. It's just, I don't want to break it, but it's not the best print. And my last recommendation, I know you're all sick of it by now, but this is the Psychic Workbook. This is Karen's workbook. This is my mentor. She's been on my podcast a few times. You can go watch it. I recommend it. I'm a little biased because I took her course. And a lot of what I learned and what I teach is very similar to her teachings, obviously. I like hers because it's not only a book, but it's also a workbook, but it's more heavy on the workbook side. And I really believe that your psychic ability is more of a practice. It's more of a do thing and less of a read and theory thing. But I get that a lot of people want to do both. So you're reading and you're doing. That's why I recommend this. And it walks you through step by step in order of what you should be doing. Protection, here's your clairs, here's blocks, here's boundaries. I mean, I recommend this so much that like when people buy my courses, I tell them like, hey, if you have the extra budget, like get this alongside. And I tell them to like follow along on certain pages. Not that they have to, but I just think it's such a good tool out there that I think everyone should have it. The only downside is obviously it's not the prettiest thing, but I don't think that's the most important thing. It's definitely a good sturdy book. It's definitely pretty on the inside. And for those of you who are new here, Karen is a psychic. She was a psychic development coach. She ran the program, the Aspen program for psychic development. She taught students for many years develop their psychic ability. She had several coaches there. I was the coach there for a year. And so she knows her stuff. She knows how to teach psychic abilities. She's been on the podcast. And so I feel like she's a very, very credible source for psychic abilities. And so she wrote this workbook and some cards that I'm going to show you here in a second. The negatives to this, to be just, as fair as possible, is that there's no stories in here. This is not like a book. This is not theories. This is not personal stories. This is a workbook. So if you want more of the, I want entertaining stuff, this is not the book for you for that. So those are my best recommendations, but I want to give you some honorable mentions. These are not technically psychic development books, but I think they are books that will help you develop your psychic abilities if you are a book lover like I am. This one, freaking love it. Intuition. Another witchcraft related book, oh my gosh, I love this one so much. This is by Mia Magic. You probably have heard of her. Get this one again if you are into witchcraft, open to it. But I love how Mia relates intuition to witchcraft, and she has put intuition and connecting to your psychic abilities in a much more magical perspective than I ever looked at it before. And I really needed this book. It made, I come at psychic abilities in a very I come at psychic abilities in a very practical, skillful way. But I love how Mia made me really approach it more in the way that I related to psychic abilities, like I did when I was a child, in a much more magical way. Again, it's so hard putting it into words, but the stories in this book and the way that she understands and writes about how she connects with spirit, it's like she understands it, she gets it, and she knows how to write it on paper that I can really like viscerally connect to. And I love her way of like explaining that. It might not be for everyone, maybe it just super connects with me, but I love it. It's not going to teach you about psychic development, but it is going to teach you about basic kind of like, I don't know, like witchcraft a little bit of just intuition, connecting to your own inner magic. Also like how to understand signs from the universe. It's kind of like a really just good intuitive magical beginner book, maybe. I don't know. Another honorable mention, Opening to Channel. So this is a book specifically about channeling, which is, I would say, like a subset of psychic development. It's actually, I think it's an important one to read if you are studying psychic development, because a lot of what it teaches are things that you need to know when it comes to understanding your psychic abilities. Like, it's a very niche down, like it's like almost like if you were to learn very specifically like automatic writing or psychometry, it's like that, very specific, like channeling. But the basics and the framework of what it teaches, I feel like is very important for understanding how your psychic mind works versus your analytical mind. And I really think that this book is good for that, Opening to Channel. So even if you decide not to channel, and maybe you just do like a degree of it, because it is, channeling is just, and again, I have a whole video on this, I'll link it above. It's just, stream of consciousness. Channeling can be automatic writing. It can be like channeling spirit. It could be channeling in a reading, but maybe it's not like a full-blown channel. Maybe it's like half in, half out is how I always describe it. Like when I'm in a reading with another person, I am technically channeling, but it's not like full channeling, like as if I were to do a spirit circle and fully let that spirit come in and just take the reins. It's like I'm still talking to the other person and I'm still, me. It's a spectrum. It's a spectrum. Anyways, I think this one is really important for understanding your psychic mind. So it's a good one to add, not like something to rush to read, but it will help you understand your psychic abilities more. Dream books are also going to help you develop your psychic abilities. So reading any books about dream work, actually doing dream work, if you've watched my dream series, is going to help you with that. I really liked Robert Wagner's book on lucid dreaming. It's a little bit more like scientific practical, so if that's up your alley, you might like this. You might not like it if you don't, like the more analytical, I don't know, like he tends to be more like, oh, I studied this, I jotted down these notes, and we did, like, what did he do? Like, he did a lot of like trial and error testing, but I've also heard that Robert Moss's books like are actually really good, and I need to add them to my list and read them. So maybe check out some of his as well. I haven't read them though. And again, not books, but cards. These are going to increase your psychic abilities. If you're like, I actually want my abilities to start working, books are great, absolutely, but practice is actually going to show you those results. And these books are 90 days worth of cards. Each day is basically a different card. You take it with you throughout the day. You do the exercises on them. There's 90 days worth of them. And I guarantee you, even after like a week or two, you're going to see some results. These are also made by my mentor, Karen Fox. I recommend these. If you're like, I don't want the theory, I don't want the book, I want the practice, this is where I would start. If you're like wanting to buy something and get into it now. Awesome, guys. I tried to make this short and simple. Sorry if I didn't, but hopefully that helps, especially if you are looking for some books. I think that I would check out the best ones and only really look there. And let me know in the comments down below if you have some others that you would recommend, any questions that you have around these, or any resources. Again, if you're new to me, I'm kind of making this video assuming that you are finding me and new to me. Just know that you have exercises here, you have videos here, I have resources. I'm always happy to answer any questions, point you in the right direction. I am here as a psychic development resource. That is all I do. We have a whole community here where we practice with each other, we help each other learn and grow, and I'd love for you to be a part of that. Alrighty, friends, so if you found this video helpful, please give it a like, and I will see you in the next one. Alrighty, bye.